Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayat. Canto 3, Chapter 28, Text number 2. Swadharma Charanam Shaktya Vidharmacha Nivartanam Daiva Labdhena Santosha Atmavicharanacharam Swadharma Charanam Shaktya Vidharmacha Nivartanam Daiva Labdhena Santosha Atmavicharanacharam. Dharmam charanam shaktya Swadharma charanam shaktya Didma Swadharma Acharanam, executing one's prescribed duties. Shaktya, to the best of one's ability. Vidharmat, unauthorized duties. Cha, and Nivartanam, avoiding. Daivat, by the grace of the Lord. Labdhena, with what is achieved. Santoshaha, satisfied. Atmavit, of the self-realized soul. Charana, the feet. Acharanam, worshipping. Translation: one should execute his prescribed duties to the best of his ability and avoid prescribing duties not allotted to him. One should be satisfied with as much gain as he achieves by the grace of the Lord, and one should worship the lotus feet of a spiritual master. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In this verse, there are many important words which could be very elaborately explained, but we shall briefly discuss the important aspects of each. The final statement, Atmavich Charanacharam. Atmavit, means a self-realized soul, or a bona fide spiritual master. Unless one is self-realized and knows what his relationship with the supersoul is, he cannot be a bona fide spiritual master. Here, it is recommended that one should seek out a bona fide spiritual master and surrender unto him, acharanam. For by inquiring from and worshiping him, one can learn spiritual activities. Paragraph. The first recommendation is swadharmacharanam. As long as we have this material body, there are various duties prescribed for us. Such duties are divided by a system of 4 social orders: Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. These particular duties are mentioned in the Shastra, and particularly in Bhagavad Gita. Swadharmacharanam means that one must discharge the prescribed duties of his particular division of society faithfully and to the best of his ability. One should not accept another's duty. If one is born in a particular society or community, he should perform the prescribed duties for that particular division. If, however, one is fortunate enough to transcend the designation of birth in a particular society or community by being elevated to the standard of spiritual identity, then his swadharma or duty is solely that of serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The actual duty of one who is advanced in Krishna consciousness is to serve the Lord. As long as one remains in the bodily concept of life, he may act according to the duties of social convention, but if one is elevated to the spiritual platform, he must simply serve the Supreme Lord. That is the real execution of Swadharma. End of purport. It's a little background because it's good to have a context for everything. And the context is, this is the personality of Godhead, Lord Kapila Dev, enlightening his mother, Devahuti, who is feeling a natural feeling of separation from Karma Muni, because he left, and she knows Kapila Dev isn't going to stay around too long either, and she's anticipating, double feelings of not loneliness, but separation from places and persons of shelter for her. And so she's asking to her son, who she understands is the personality of Godhead. Imagine being a mother knowing that your son is the personality of Godhead, to please enlighten her. So that's what he's doing. And in sequence, there's a series of topics that he's been discussing. It's a very large section and a very important section. Sankhya is a very important foundational teaching of bhakti, because bhakti is resting upon, or the activities of bhakti are resting upon proper understanding, sambandha gyan, and the relationship between all things and their source of emanation, etc., etc. Because we're going to deal with things, understanding the connection of things with the source. It's an outcome that comes from bhakti, but it's also a foundation. There's a nice teaching, many nice teachings. One of those many nice teachings is there are 30, according to the Bhagavatam, there are 30 characteristics of devotional service. 9 are direct. 21 of those 30 are supportive of the direct. They're not direct, but they help. or they're supportive of, or one who follows them and makes a connection with one of the 9 or combination, then quickly they can proceed on the path of perfection or the path of spiritual life. So, knowledge, cultivation of knowledge is one such asset, and understanding what's what. Sambandha Gyan is a fundamental building block to understanding, where that train is going. How does one act in relation to that which is the source of everything? And then what's the fruit of that? So Kapila Dev, is taking his mother through that sequence. And she's a good audience. She's not an ordinary lady, and so forth. So the beginning of this chapter is a carryover from the end of last chapter. The end of last chapter was speaking of the process of dhyan, or meditation, in the authorized yoga system. And the authorized yoga system sometimes is taken for the wrong purpose. So the purpose of taking up the yoga system is important, along with having the right system, and not a derivative or distortion of. So the conclusion is of the previous chapter is, one should not take up yoga with the aspiration of attaining mystic powers, because certainly that's something that can come, and for certain practitioners it's everything. Mystic powers. And one who manifests mystic powers, voila, they're God. They can declare that they're God because they can do something mystical that people go, wow, he must be God. But it has nothing to do with being the source of everything, or godliness, and so forth. So that's the conclusion of the previous chapter. It's again underlined in the beginning of this chapter, and Kapila Dev is making a statement in yesterday's class, the first verse. Properly followed, read the last verse. By practicing this system, one can become joyful and progressively advance towards the path of the absolute truth. So that's the introduction, or the phala statement, the fruit of following this. So it encourages the listener of the Bhagavatam or Devahuti to follow what her son is saying. And then comes practical application of that principle. So the goal is fixing the mind, that's already been stated, fixing the mind on the Supersoul, fixing the mind on the Supreme manifest within. And it's characterized in the verse as an impersonal. That is to say, Paramatma is not Bhagavan. Bhagavan is personal. And Paramatma is not like impersonal, but it's not Bhagavan. It's an expansion of Bhagavan, that's fine. So is Brahmajyoti, an expansion of Bhagavan. But it's not yet the fullness of bhakti. It's a stage leading towards the fullness of bhakti. So in that stage leading towards the fullness of bhakti, then there's the practical application. The practical application has to do with things that we often hear. So it's stated here. You receive a body, and that with the body you get the inner as well as the outer covering of the soul, the gross and subtle, the psychophysical nature of a conditioned soul. And the recommendation is perform duties according to psychophysical nature. Now, interestingly, I'm sure you all picked up on it, Prabhupada speaks of birth as opposed to psychophysical nature. I'll read the sentence. Therefore, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya if one is born in this is in the purport, if one is born in a particular society or community, he should perform the prescribed duties for that particular division. Birth. If, however, one is fortunate enough to transcend the designations of birth in a particular society or community by being elevated to the standard of spiritual identity, then his swadharma or duty is solely that of serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I mean, so there's so many examples, Prahlad being the son of Hiranyakashipu, and Bali Maharaj being in that line also, but his character was not demoniac. His character was not according to birth. There's so many, without list of examples. The real qualification is one's nature. However, Prabhupada isn't going into that for some reason in this purport. He's simply describing a way that one can identify in a responsible manner one's duties. And it is quite natural, supposing, for example, one's father is an Ayurvedic doctor, and then the Ayurvedic doctor father is likely to carefully instruct his son in the principles of Ayurveda, the medicines and pulse reading, and the activities, the understandings, the knowledge, the application of that knowledge. Although so it's an advantage, but supposing his nature, the son of the Ayurvedic physician, is something else. So he's not going to pick up on supposing the son is inclined to music. This kind of isn't present when his father's teaching Ayurveda. So he may become a musician instead of an Ayurvedic physician. There's an advantage to being born in a certain way and being trained by the mother or father in that particular way. There's an advantage, but it's not a guarantee. So we all know that teaching. One's occupation, varna, is not determined by birth, it's determined by quality and work. Quality and work. Work means you not just have a disposition or quality, but you work that way. So there's so many ways of saying this. Born in a Brahmin family, but one may be, different than a Brahmana. Not clean, not truthful, not born in a Brahmin family. It's not a Brahmana, which doesn't have the quality nor the activity of a Brahmana, so it's not a Brahmana. Anyway, back to what Prabhupada is writing here. If one is born in a particular society or community, he should perform the prescribed duties for that particular division. Not rigid, but it's a tendency, a natural tendency, and there's exceptions to the natural tendency. And the exception is by spiritual association, one somehow, by spiritual association, comes to a spiritual conception of self. At least notionally a spiritual conception, not yet in a mature stage. And so then that person's duties, because the topic in verse number 2 is about duties. So perform duties that are akin to your nature, and don't perform duties that are not akin to your nature. And it's just touching on the topic. This is Canto 3. And in Canto 7, it's far more expanded. The Canto 7, final 5 chapters of Canto 7, there's a detailed description because Yudhishthira asks Narada to give a detailed description. So he does, of both varnas and ashrams. And then there's descriptions of things to be done, things not to be done. We know in principle, accept things favorable, reject things unfavorable. And that's in relation to bhakti. Anukulyasya sankalpa pratikulyasya varjanam. That's favorable and unfavorable to bhakti. Accept and reject. Then there's just duties, those that aren't on the platform of bhakti, they understand duties are beneficial. They're not transcendental bhaktas, devotees. They just want, they're trained, their perspective is training in proper conduct, which is fantastic, as opposed to no understanding of proper conduct. So the proper conduct, folks, that's for material elevation, commonly. For material elevation, attaining prosperity in this life and after this life, either in the human form or on earth or in the heavenly region or something, but upgrade in prosperity and knowledge and birth and beauty and material assets. Some persons want that, and they follow procedures of performance of duty and avoiding someone else's duty. And that's the principle that's being presented in this verse. A little bit of the details in the purport, and further detail comes later in the Bhagavatam. But so it's a principle that Kapila Deva, is not giving details and details. He's giving principles, at least in this case, just giving principles to his mother. Now, his mother is an elevated soul. She doesn't need teachings in proper conduct. But he's asked, she has asked, so he's giving principles for elevation. The elevation is beyond the lamentation and the sense of grief that she's lost her husband and soon is going to lose her son. That somebody else doesn't get embarrassed. Check your phone if you have your phone in on position, so you don't have a problem. Better check my phone too. Okay, so gradual elevation is the topic, and principles that help in that gradual elevation, principles that interfere with that gradual elevation. Perform duties according to your social position. This, same as what we will be hearing, stanes to tuck. That's in bhakti. It's not instructed to give up your social position. Stay in your social position and perform the duties according to your social position. That's what's being said. And then a second point is not being greedy. Greedy means whatever I have is not enough. Nice. Or maybe not nice, but I want more. And that's not a principle for elevation. The principle for elevation is my past is what my past is. And according to my past, it is destined for me that certain amount of this and that and the other thing will come, and I don't have to strive for it. It's the difference between doership and spirituality. The doership is I have to do some good stuff so I get more stuff, and avoid the bad stuff so I don't get the bad stuff. So it's just a material principle. And the higher elevation principle is, whatever I've done, I've done. And it's my responsibility to accept the good and the bad in the mix. It's a very basic teaching. Not being attached to the fruit, but recognizing the fruit is a product of my own involvement in material nature. It's a nice verse. I like chapter 13, verse 22. Purusha, that's the tongue-in-cheek Purusha, meaning the imitation Purusha, the living entity that's imitating the Purusha, Parama Purusha. Purusha, Prakriti, Stho, there's this word sta, situated in Prakriti. The living entity situated in Prakriti. Bhunkte means he wants to be the enjoyer of Prakriti. Bhunkte, Prakriti Jan Gunan. The living entities in the material world, Prakriti Jan Gunan. Kananam Guna Sangosya. According to the Guna Sangha, that's the cause of Sadasad Yoni Janmasu, by good fortune, ill fortune. Or Prabhupada translates it in his Bhaktivedanta purports as good and bad. Now, from a transcendental sense, there's no good and bad. It's all good. All good because everything that comes from Krishna is all good. So, but good fortune, ill fortune comes to us. We're the architect of that good fortune, ill fortune. And what comes because of my past free will choices involved with material nature, that is what it is. Whatever it is what it is. And I don't make my business to make it better than what it is. That's material is adjusting or counteracting or something, but just involved in the material energy, the reactions of my past deeds and making it nicer instead of not nice. So whatever is allotted, be peaceful. One should be satisfied with as much gain as he achieves by the grace of the Lord. No, by one's past karma, but past karma is, the focus goes to the relationship, not just karma and forget the relationship. So by the grace of the Lord, I'm getting what I deserve. Good fortune, ill fortune, I'm getting what I deserve. And then the final point is, with attention focused on the Sanskrit phrases Atmavit. Atma, vit means to know. Vid, or vit, one who's a knower of Atma, the self-realized soul. So the self-realized soul is the qualified spiritual master, or the qualified spiritual master knows the self, knows Atma. They're fixed in the spiritual conception, and they live accordingly. And they, by their actions and words, by their achar and prachar, they convey that to those with whom they associate, or a student, or people in general aside from students. They just live in the world with that achar and prachar. So the recommendation at the end of this verse, one should worship the lotus feet of Charana, Archanam. Charana, the lotus feet. Archanam, worship the lotus feet of the Atmavit person. If that, there are persons in this world that don't understand it, and they want to pick themselves up by the bootstraps. They want to ascend without acknowledging the importance of worshiping the lotus feet of the self-realized soul. They don't understand it. They don't want to understand it, because that would inhibit their freedom. Then they have to subordinate themselves to someone. They don't want to subordinate themselves. They want freedom. They value their freedom so much. They can't even think of it. They don't think of it. They won't think of it. Even they're getting banged on the head, they won't think of it. And the instructions in Scripture are filled. So here's Kapila instructing his mother. It's not like she has some resistance. She's submitting herself to her son. She didn't have some resistance. He's just describing principles of elevation. So I'll read the verse again. We'll end. One should execute his prescribed duties to the best of his ability and avoid performing duties not allotted to him. One should be satisfied with as much gain as he achieves by the grace of the Lord, and he should worship the lotus feet of a spiritual master. Nice. Very nice. Good principles to live by. And the context is, this is on the path that leads to the Bhagavan realization. It's not direct devotional service yet. Back to this reference of there are things that are attended to, or they assist, they help nourish, but it's not the essence of bhakti. That's nice. Very nice. Very beneficial. If there's some discussion. They hide the button on this microphone. Somewhere towards the bottom. Go ahead.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Oh, look, you found it.
You just said that by spiritual association, one comes to the spiritual conception of life. And just something happened yesterday. I met with a person. He's one of those tech entrepreneurs.
He's one of those.
One of those tech entrepreneurs kind of people.
Okay.
And successfully built 3 different companies and sold, and probably multimillionaire kind of a person. It so happened I had to spend 2 hours with him, and probably 1.5 hours he was speaking about what he was doing. And
very interesting, huh?
yeah, and I purposefully just listened to him. And
for an hour and a half.
Because
congratulations.
I did.
Congratulations for listening to an hour and a half about something that you can't relate to.
It looked like he had some real spiritual inclination in him. I could sense that, and so yeah. I wanted to see where that was going, because after building and selling the companies and all that, he's still not satisfied, and he's looking now for using this AI technology thing to somehow provide people with spiritual knowledge. And so there has been like one of the observations he said was, he notices people taking up different type of spiritual practices, but they don't stick with it. They just move on.
He's noticed.
Yeah, he noticed.
He has noticed, yeah. Okay.
He's seeing people come and go, come and go. Another thing he noticed is all the knowledge is not really available, easily accessible form. So because of that, maybe they are not getting all the knowledge. But after hearing everything that he had to say, the one good thing I noticed was he was spiritually, there is some spiritual inclination, but with all his knowledge, he still is not, really did not get the essence of it. And so I mentioned to him that I have my spiritual master visiting here, and today morning we had the Srimad Bhagavatam class, and we had a very nice discussion on such and such topic, and I said to him that, oh, he had one other main issue he noticed is that all his friends' children are having serious mental health issues. Many young people are having mental health issues, and so
Young people means his peers in college.
no, his friends' children.
His friends' children. Okay.
Yeah. So these are the two things, and so there are many other things. But anyway, some reason, he's also searching for spiritual understanding. He's also looking why people come and go and all these things. So I was thinking, like, he was unaware of the fact that it is only by spiritual association there is this mercy factor, or the guidance that is coming from the spiritual master. This is an integral component of any progress or any steadiness in one's spiritual practice. He seemed to be completely unaware of that, and yet trying to do this artificial intelligence thing. So, I mean, whatever reason he came here, he came to this temple, and he's appreciative of ISKCON, but still don't get it, that it is the association factor which is the most important. So I was just thinking about this because, here is an intelligent man with a lot of ability to do.
A lot of what?
Lot of capacity to do, the artificial intelligence and whatnot. But still, even during all his research, he still hasn't understood the fact that for progress in spiritual life, the fundamental thing is personal guidance from a realized soul. So anyway, I just shared what I could. Not sure how much of it registered. But without this personal association, how is anybody going to make any progress, or even sticking with one type of spiritual practice that one has chosen, even after coming to the practice of Krishna consciousness? If this factor is not fully understood, one could lose it. Is that...
So you're sharing, I didn't catch, is there a question at the end of the sharing?
What I was, I can understand someone like him not having understood the...
Because of association is absent.
Yeah. But
Therefore,
I was feeling like even for people like us who have come into this practice of bhakti, and we have heard the importance of service to the spiritual master, and that everything is dependent upon that, not anything else, because it is only by the mercy and association of someone who is on that platform one can even hope to stay steady in the path of bhakti. And I was thinking, like, this is applicable even to us. Someone like him, he is very new to that. But this is applicable even to us, because we see people falling even after practicing so many years.
yeah, not just falling away, sometimes becoming cuckoo. Cuckoo. And, how did that happen? Even in some cases where they have had, but they slackened. They have had that association. They became initiated devotee. And there wasn't it was at least some kind of sincerity in that important step of life. And then time passed, they slipped on a banana peel and they went crashing. That happens too. So staying with it is ongoing. That association that you're bringing up. As you were speaking, I was thinking of as you're sharing, I'm going to share something. Many of the devotees in the room like kirtan. And one of the celebrities for kirtan in ISKCON is Janavi Harrison. And Janavi Harrison is married. And she married a man that's not yet initiated. Very nice man. And I've met him recently. And it turns out his occupation is he's a chaplain at Stanford University. Not this chaplain, that chaplain, but chaplain, like universal, not a Hindu chaplain or a Christian chaplain or a Muslim chaplain. Non-denominational, for everybody, chaplain. So I met him and I asked him, what do you do? Like, what, practically speaking. So his answer fits very much what you were just sharing. That's why I'm sharing it. He said, in Stanford University, there are many cerebral people. University knows these men and ladies that are in, undergraduate and graduate and postgraduate, and they're very accomplished persons, and they're so focused on their cerebralness that they've lost touch with their spirituality. So his service, his job assignment is one-on-one discussion with each and every student. What's your spirituality? Is there? And what is it? And how can you rediscover it and connect with it while you progress with this, super accomplished life? Because they, the administrators of the university, want to see not just cerebral people, but capable, because people that are cerebral, that don't have spirituality, they can go off and do cuckoo things. Something very powerful in the hand of a person that's not properly directed can do very dangerous things. So, there's many reasons, I'm sure, why they do what they do, why they've engaged him as a chaplain, and that is his job description. And he likes it. And he has a particular persuasion, he has a Vaishnava persuasion, but he knows how to interact with people that have a different persuasion, whatever that different one is. There's so many out there, garden variety. But to find it, to help the person discover it and nourish it. Now, naturally, it has his personality, and some relationship between the person and him will develop, and he is who he is. But he's broad-minded. So anyway, unsteadiness, back to the point that you were making, that unsteadiness that he was observing, and then with the children of his peers are having mental disturbance. No surprise. Boom. And then to make that connection and to stay with that connection. Because, and then it comes the why question. Why? Why steady? Just go from one to the next, and that's just fine, because it's just fine. Because I'm doing something instead of nothing, so that's fine. Why is consistency important in making that connection? What's the why between making that connection, behind that connection? There may be an initial idea that's not complete. And so then one desists, or picks up another something, or at least just drops the something. That's a comment on. So, it's a nice topic. Let's see if there's some other discussion. It's 20 minutes after 8. We'll get there. They know how to pass the mic. Go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. I have a slightly long preamble to this question. So this is coming from, my experience of trying to understand my psychophysical nature. And it's taken
Trying to understand better.
my psychophysical nature.
You sped up, and I lost you. You're trying to understand.
My psychophysical nature, and it has taken a couple of decades and through different phases of disappointments and things like that. So I'm, now as a homeschool parent, when I see my two children, I understand, the importance of it. And so there's a two-part to this preamble. One part is, I was remembering the story of Satyakama Jabala.
Your speaking pattern is when you speak slowly, no problem. Then at a certain key point, your voice speeds up and I can't catch it. I miss it.
Sorry.
So
Yes.
slow down.
Sorry.
And especially the end of the sentence when you get to the punchline. Be kind. I'm half deaf.
My apologies. So the question is coming from a homeschool parent
Okay.
who has two children, and I am observing them,
Yeah.
trying to understand who they are and how can I provide them opportunities.
Yeah.
And so one aspect of it is, I was remembering the Upanishadic story, Satyakama Jabala,
Okay.
where Gautama says, oh, he is truthful,
Yeah.
he can be a Brahmana.
Yes.
And so that is one lens, Bhagavad Gita says, Samadhama, all of, Brahma karma svabhavajam, Kshatriya karma svabhavajam. So there
you
is
go
that
again. Yeah,
lens.
you go again. You got the end of the sentence and you went real fast.
I
I don't need the whole thing again.
Yes.
Just, I want to correct your speaking because you ask nice questions and I want to catch it.
So the one lens is through Bhagavad Gita, where it describes the qualities of a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya.
Yes, yes.
The second lens that I have heard Mother Urmila, she speaks about intelligences. Somebody may have interpersonal skills, somebody may be arithmetic, somebody may have language as their skills, there's 9 of those.
There you go again.
So the question is, because you are now speaking about Jahnavi Harrison's husband.
You're not speaking about,
You were speaking about Jahnavi Harrison's husband,
Yeah.
how he meets cerebral people.
yeah.
So the question, I'm sorry, I might not be clear, but the question that's coming up is, when I see a certain skill or a quality in my child, is it good to nurture just that one thing, thinking that is their psychophysical nature?
Or,
Or should we bring up other things to balance out their overall
it's a parenting question, but it's a teacher-student question also.
true?
Yeah.
True.
So, yeah, let's look at models. Let's look at Prabhupada. That's a model. And how does he, as a teacher, nourish? And he did both. The short answer is. He recognized somebody has this gift. And he could spot it a mile away, and he engaged them according to their gift. And he saw other things, and he encouraged those other things. Not everything, but some things. Either things that were needed that were weak, or something that was a tendency but not the primary tendency. And it just to make them well-rounded. Instead of just narrow-minded, but abroad. So he did both. Or you have some friends, I know who some of your friends are, and they're models of parenting. And my understanding, my observation of them is they do both. Not either or. So primary and secondary. And supposing in a parenting situation, one child is particularly strong in this area, encourage it. And that same child that's not particularly strong, but there's some capacity in some other area, or there's paucity in a certain area, and without pushing, but nurturing an area that is important to make the individual, a wholesome and balanced individual. Encouraging it. Not pushing, but, giving facility to it. And my understanding of one of the ways to teach is to ask a lot of questions. There are different types of questions. What do you feel? I did, just the other evening, I met. I won't do it because the people may be embarrassed if I say it publicly. But there was some inattention on the part of one of the youth. And it was like obvious. So rather than saying something, I just asked a bunch of questions. And by the result of asking the questions, the relationship between myself and that young person who was kind of distracted or not present, some relationship. And when there's some relationship, then I wasn't giving directive. I actually ended up giving some encouragement in the direction of, when you're in the company of people that are particularly spiritually inclined and you're not, ask yourself the question, what's going on here? Internally and externally. What is it that they're experiencing that I'm not experiencing? What is it? I'm not interested. I'm not interested. It wasn't offensive, but they were clearly not interested. They were there physically, but they were absent. So one of the ways that makes the roundedness is just asking questions and give attention to the person, so the person understands they're not being judged, but there's a relationship and you may have something to give them. And if there's a sense of security in that relationship between you and the other individual, in this case it's a son, but there's the community. It goes beyond you and your own children, and the children with their siblings. It's like there's a community. The interpersonal dimension, where there's, meaningfulness in the exchange between you and them, and it's not just one thing, it's the bigger picture of being a whole person. So, both. Not either or. Something else.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. From the verse, from the translation, the first sentence, where it says that we need to do our prescribed duty, best of our ability. and avoid performing duties not allotted to us. So my thoughts are going that how we tend to compare ourselves with others.
Okay.
And in that comparison, we see,
That can be toxic.
yes.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, also, it can be, we can see how others do their services or they have nice skills.
Yeah.
And
That's nice.
And maybe we, even though it's not my nature or not like something, my duty or ability, should we try to learn those because
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
think
But then it's Krishna is to be pleased. If that's missing, the comparison turns into envy or snobbery. Either way, I'm great or I'm too small, and I'm envious of the one. So, but if appreciate those that are great and learn from those that are great because it helps the community. If more than that person who's accomplished at something, and other interpersonal dimensions that if you or any one of us can be a model appreciator of the service of another, or perceiver that there's another that their service is weak in this particular area. What can I do? What can we do to appreciate the individual and help the individual? This is ideal interpersonal dynamics in the community, or within a family, or within whatever the circle that we're speaking about. The worldwide ISKCON, or the Naperville, or North America, or whatever the circle is that we're speaking about. It just the character of comparison is it can be toxic, but it can also be very helpful in social dynamics and skills. It can be toxic. One can go down instead of going up. Tendency in comparison, there's a tendency to move towards toxic. That's common. The other is uncommon. But still, you recognize excellence and you praise it. Not out of envy, but just out of, Krishna should be pleased. That's the key, is that Krishna should be pleased. That's bhakti. And then we have these gradations, those that are more advanced, those that are peers, and those that are less advanced. And we make discriminations like that. That's fine. For what purpose? The Krishna should be pleased. Okay? Easier said than done, but the conditioned tendency is conditioned tendency. There's no intrinsic problem in comparing or evaluating or discerning this versus that. It's where it's coming from and where it goes to after that discernment. That's the problem. You want to add something to this? I can tell.
Maharaj, I was also thinking that, one part is we need to understand who we are
Yes.
first.
Yes.
So, because there is so many, sometimes I get really confused. Where do I need to put my focus on? Because if that...
Ask your kids. Ask those who are close to you and have affection for you. And, they're not, when there's openness in relationships and the trustworthy persons, you'll hear honest answer. I use this phrase, I've been using this phrase for a couple decades. We have our blind spots. Things that others can see that we can't see because we have our blind spots. So ask somebody that's a well-wisher and wise not, a vilifier, but a well-wisher and wise. Please help me see my blind spots. And sometimes people, you don't have to invite it, they'll tell you. I had that happen recently. Okay, they're right. There wasn't resentment, but it was a thank you. And they were right. Room for improvement. Okay. Because of time, we'll just take a question or two and we're going to end.
Guru Maharaj, this verse reminds me of Bhagavad Gita 18:47, where there's also a discussion of
For some reason, I can hear other people, but your voice, you do without the microphone. That's easier. Better for me, at least. Premananda wants the microphone.
This verse reminds
1847. Question on the translation. Yes, 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 yes. 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 That's a principle. And never? Well, that's if it's a dharmic according to your nature, not adharmic. My adharma, my nature is to be a thief. And there's no reaction because I'm just being a thief. Well, but then apichetsu daracharo. And Krishna corrects. He takes responsibility for those who are dedicated to him. And if they need a bang in the head, he'll bang them in the head. But it's coming from Krishna, and it's not karmic reaction. Kshipram bhavati dharmatma. That's the difference between bhakti and a worldly person that does adharma. Even it's like, in the category of their prescribed duties. Anyway, it's delicate for a materialist, for a karma kanda person. They don't get it because it's a different lens, different paradigm. And then bhakti is different than karma kanda. It's a performance of duty because I'll get elevation by performance of duty and avoiding otherwise. Okay? Srila Prabhupada ki jai.